and Happy New Year from all of us, the whole team here at Food Rebels. We are so happy that you have chosen to listen to Food Rebels on the first day of 2025. We have decided to compile the best bits of new beginnings that people share with us over the course of the year. We have all these fantastic people who come on the show. They're food founders, they have set up wineries, they're chefs who've started new restaurants, all these brilliant, really inspirational people. And a lot of them very generously share the story of what it was like to get started. And it's really inspiring. It's really inspiring. And we thought it was a lovely way to start 2025 by sharing that inspiration with you guys. I wonder if people are sitting at home feeling a bit full of cheese over the Christmas period and kind of dreaming the dream of what they might actually want to do instead of whatever perhaps it is that they are currently doing. And we wanted to inspire that. So here are our best bits. Have a listen. I actually wanted to kick off this show with Let's Get Peated when lovely Hannah Brown, the mastermind behind the brand Peated, joined us. And she was only really 6 weeks into her new business, and it was absolutely beautiful. I can tell you, having had her on the show and she shared her beautiful peat smoked tomato sauces, I used up, well, my family used up all 4 pots greedily. It really adds so much to the dishes that you're creating at home. I can't really recommend it more highly.
How did it all start? Where did you have this moment?
So while we're only 6 weeks old, we're actually 8 years old. It's been a long journey. I first had the idea for a peat smoked tomato juice back in 2017 when I saw bartenders really struggling to make a flavoursome Bloody Mary with a carton of tomato juice. And I thought, what if we were to replicate the whiskey making process, but instead of peat smoking malt, we peat smoked tomatoes? And I thought this was such a wonderful idea that I quit my job overnight on it. And I started developing the recipe, the label, how I would sell it. And then when I actually left, because I was on a 6-month notice period, when I actually left, I then started phoning bottlers to ask if they could make this smoky juice. And the 30 contract bottlers in the UK all put the phone down on me. They almost laughed me out the building because they did not want to make a smoky, thick, small batch, hard to blend tomato juice. So actually I faced going back to my job with my tail between my legs, or actually I could tackle the problem head on. So I paused the launch of the juice and set up a factory called the Startup Drinks Lab, which was for people like me, entrepreneurs that had an innovative idea that they needed somewhere to produce, but there wasn't currently the facilities for it. So we ran that for a number of years. And then in 2021, I thought, wow, a factory is all consuming. I am not getting a chance to launch this juice. So I took a step back from the factory, launched the juice in 2021. And on the positive, what was happening was we won 3 Great Taste Awards. The media called us the UK's best Bloody Mary mixer. And we began exporting to Dubai and the US, and we got into bars in London. The downside is we were selling almost nothing. And that's because Bloody Marys is such a niche category, and we were a niche of a niche, which Business 101, check your market size. I did not do that. But we got this tiny insight that a lot of people were cooking with us more than drinking us. So if you like a Bloody Mary, you probably have 2 a year, and that's Christmas Day and when you're on a flight. Whereas you have 2 pasta dishes a week. And we thought, light bulb number 2. So we thought, let's pause the Bloody Mary business, but take this award-winning recipe that we have and this idea. And we've just spent the last 12 months flipping our entire business. And 6 weeks ago, we launched Peated, which is a range of peat smoked tomato sauces for cooking.
That's amazing. I love that they come from this birthplace of a Bloody Mary. What is it? Tomato juice and vodka and celery salt and Tabasco sauce and Worcestershire sauce. And you're right. Those 2 occasions, Christmas Day. I mean, sometimes if you're staying with somebody quite posh, they might offer you one with breakfast. Not very often, though. But that's amazing. What an incredible transition. Do you still run the Startup Drinks Lab on the side? Is that, you said you took a step back. Is it still one of your babies that you're juggling?
It'll always be one of my babies. I've taken a big step back, and there's a team in running it. It's doing really well, and it's helping so many entrepreneurs every day. But I quickly realised I couldn't run the business, the factory, and give it the time it deserved, and also do the food and drink businesses.
Is it I'm just wondering about how you're making it. Have you got your own factory then? Are you guys literally on the factory floor, or have you found someone to help you with that?
It's a bit of both. So with the drinks lab, we were on the factory floor making drinks, but the drinks lab is set up for drinks and not for food. So while we have our own traditional smokehouse, and I'm actually just away there shortly after this, we will smoke ourselves, and we are on that smokehouse floor doing all the smoking. But we've found this wonderful business in Cornwall that make all artisanal foods. So they have actually kindly started helping us make peated. So it's a partnership that straddles the country.
Oh, that's brilliant. That really is, isn't it? North to south. That's fantastic. So you've overcome a lot of different kind of setbacks and learnings. And how do you take the feedback and things? I find, with successful entrepreneurs, and I definitely count you as one of these where you're already on your kind of third or however many businesses. How do you handle setbacks?
Without trying to sound corny, I genuinely believe with every setback comes an opportunity. So every one of my businesses has come from a setback. So with Tongue and Pete, I spotted bartenders were struggling with tomato juice, and I thought, we can help them. And then when we tried to launch that, nobody would bottle it. And I thought, well, it's not just me that's in this position. There's other entrepreneurs that can't get their innovative ideas launched. So that came the opportunity for the Drinks Lab. And then when Tongue and Pete was winning awards for its taste, but certainly not winning awards for its number of sales, I thought, well, there's an opportunity in people cooking it, because people tend to have a couple of pasta dishes a week, but they have the 2 Bloody Marys a year. So let's flip the business. So I strongly believe that with every problem comes an opportunity. And that's what we've tried to do. And even just recently, there is a lot of negativity around the use of peat. So we were looking at ways that for every jar we sell, could we give money back to peatland regeneration? There unfortunately was no official scheme that was available. So I've set up a scheme, and in the past year have been lucky enough to bring on 9 distillers that use peat, that are all small to medium-sized businesses, but they also want to give back. So what we've done is we're forming a trust, and we're going to go out and donate a percentage of our sales with the support of the Scottish Government to small crofters who we can teach them how to cut and regenerate peat efficiently. And the hope is overall we'll have given back more peat than any of us have taken. So again, wherever I find there's been a challenge, there's always an opportunity to make things better.
Hub joined us on the show right towards the end of 2024, and Hub van Bockel, great name, and he's the founder of Tenzing, came from a background of Red Bull and kind of went and created this product that just did all the things that Red Bull couldn't do. And it's really inspiring. I love his story. I love his attitude and his mindset of how he got this business going and why. It's really cool.
What has inspired you to move into this space of kind of energy drinks?
I was actually at Red Bull for a long time. So I was head of, I was head of marketing for UK and Europe and Netherlands. So I was there for 8 years. Loved it, loved the brand, but I just kind of at one point just fell out of love with the product, and I just thought should be a better way. And I think it was one of those classic stories where I thought, okay, let's do that myself. Because I think especially the bigger companies like Coke, like Red Bull, they're effectively stuck with a product that was made either in Red Bull's case in the 80s or in Coke's case in the 80s of the century before, where people had different kind of outlooks on, nutritionists and doctors weren't as worried about like the sugar intake or the artificial sweeteners that's now heavily under pressure, also with the World Health Organization advising against them. I also just wanted to, so there was like a start when I started, I was like, okay, I believe that there was a way to do this better that would actually benefit people if they would have an energy that was like good for you. So I believed in that opportunity. And secondly, I also just really felt like going out alone, or not alone, actually, of course, with a great team now, but like starting my own business. And so those two things were the kind of the driving force of going for it. And I wanted to create an energy drink that was all natural. I was traveling, found out what the Sherpas drink, and they drink a really strong tea with salt and a lemon tea. And that became the basis of our recipe. So it's a triple hit of natural caffeine, vitamin C and electrolytes. I wanted to name it after Tenzing, the first man on Mount Everest, Edmund Hillary. Reached out to the family and we worked closely with them ever since. They're partners in the business.
Amazing. And what was it? Because I always say big decisions are there's never one thing that pushes you over the edge. It's often 10% decisions where you're like, oh, and another thing. What was the catalyst, if you like? What was the moment where you went, I've got to do this myself?
Well, I guess it is really what I just said is like this. I think I had one business before. So I launched a fashion business and I started at the bottom with socks. And it was really quite cool. It was right in the beginning of the internet, so it was just like, I thought it was back in the day when no one ordered the clothes online at all. And then I just thought, okay, two insights back on that idea was like, okay, let's say the boxer short was very nothing until like Marky Mark and Calvin Klein came along. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, I remember Calvin Klein.
Yeah, exactly. Boxer shorts went from a £2 thing to like a £50 thing, and I thought, okay, socks, that hasn't happened. And secondly, socks is one of the only items you don't have to fit online. You don't go to a store and fit a sock, and they're obviously fit through your mailbox. So that was kind of the insight then, and I sold it without making any money or loss, which I don't think is such a bad for your first venture. So I always had this sense of I want to start an own business. What I learned from my socks adventure is that it's really helpful if you go into a business that you know something about. Like I actually knew nothing about fashion and I knew nothing about online businesses. Wasn't particularly good at both. So now I knew this energy segment really well, of course. I knew I liked it as well because I didn't enjoy that other job as well. It was very technical. Like, because back in the day, you didn't have those fulfillment agencies that would help you out.
Yeah.
So you had this pack all the socks. It's a very logistical job, which I don't like. With energy, it's much more about communities and sports and, stuff I'm really into. So I think those are my two key learnings. Find something that you're good at and find something you enjoy doing. Because, let's say a purpose alone is not going to make it. Like my purpose for the socks is great, but I was folding socks in a box all day. No matter how great the purpose, that's not fun. Yeah. So, that's what I learned is like, yes, the purpose is there, but you need way more than that. You need to be doing something that you love doing and are actually better at than other people.
Seeds for Days was a brilliant show where we had Patrick from Linwoods come and share the story. I mean, there's not often you meet somebody with the heritage that Linwoods Health Foods has of his grandfather starting this company and talking about the eggs and him getting everything started right from the very beginning. It's really, really inspiring.
We're an SME, so my grandfather started the business probably in the 1930s.
Wow.
Where they lived on a small farm, maybe 7 acres, and he started to collect the eggs around the local farms because all the farms around in Northern Ireland were quite small subsistence. So you had 4 or 5 cows, some pigs, a few sheep, 200 chickens, and you grew your own potatoes and some veg and a few fruit trees. So he started to collect the eggs and wholesale them to the egg packer and put a little van on the road. And then things developed. He started to sell them the chicken meal and some oil for their lamps and their tractors or whatever. And that developed. Then he bought a small site and built a shop, a small grocery store on the side of a road and a hardware store. And that shop has been kind of the constant throughout the whole business. But unfortunately, he died when he was quite young at 43. He fell off, but it was a horse and cart and banged his head on his collecting the eggs.
Yeah.
And then subsequently, he went in for a routine operation a number of months later and must have had a blood clot or whatever and passed away during the operation. So he left a family of 10 behind him. My dad was number 4.
10 children?
10 children from 17 down to 2-year-old.
Oh my goodness. So your grandmother
my grandmother had her hands full.
Yeah.
And I suppose my grandfather ran the business. So she had very little kind of knowledge or input into it and was quite lost.
Sounds like she was quite busy already.
Yes, raising the family and trying to keep on top of it. I mean,
we think we've got it hard with 2 kids and a full-time job.
Yeah,
wow.
2's enough for me as well. I'll be stopping there. But his oldest sister, Genevieve, she took on the running of the business, and thankfully his brother, Pat, was a really
steady...
After
him you're named?
Probably.
Okay, cool.
He was a very steadying influence on the 10 kids, and certainly my dad would still reference his Uncle Pat a lot in terms of the guidance and the advice that he gave. So he was able to kind of steer the family through that transition into the next generation. Genevieve, as I said, took on the running at 17.
Wow.
And as Dad was 10 years of age.
So that's your father's sister?
Yes, his oldest sister. And then as things developed, Dad left school at 14 because he's dyslexic. So he hated school, but he felt he was treated with respect.
Yeah, when
shop.
He was working,
Yes, treated as a little man, as he talked
Probably
about.
really bright, really capable.
Yeah.
Dyslexia didn't actually matter.
He just couldn't read very well. So he was straight into the shop and, learned all he could. And I suppose he talks about he always had this feeling that he was destined to take it on for some reason. And at 20 then he took on the running of the shop, and he ran the business for 60 full years until he handed over to me 2 years ago. So he's 82 now.
Wow.
Still very much involved in the business. But if I go back, so the business went through lots of different iterations. He started international transport for a number of years. He imported turf from the Republic of Ireland into Northern Ireland. Linwood's probably in its current iteration really started around the early 80s when he started to import fresh bread from the Republic of Ireland into Northern Ireland. So because I'm sure you're aware of the religious issues we have had over in Northern Ireland, so we were all very religious and nobody worked on a Sunday. So there was no fresh bread baked until Monday.
Nice.
And you got the fresh bread on a Tuesday. And he was able to bring bread up on a Sunday and deliver it freshly on Monday morning.
Wow.
So he built a wholesale business, and then he done the same with fresh dairy products. So he done the same with bread and milk, and built up a business of probably 50 vehicles at its peak, delivering bread and milk.
So the original Milk and More sort of idea.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So that was from the early 80s right through until 2016, 2017. In that stage, we had 250 people employed. We had built a bakery. We'd built a dairy to produce our own fresh bakery goods and dairy products. But as after the Troubles finished, then the supermarkets and the big players started to come into the NI market. Before that, it was all corner shops, convenience stores, the local. That was our kind of bread and butter as such. And so the margins started to get tighter and tighter and tighter in that business. And eventually we exited bakery and dairy in 2017, 2018.
Wow. So you sold the bakery.
we divested out of it, I suppose. Sold would be a very generous word for it.
Okay.
We just essentially stopped and sold what we could. Because we were in a very fortunate position that we had a strong health food business and division there alongside that. So if I take you back to 1994, so the family of 10 siblings, 8 of them had heart bypass operations and heart trouble.
Oh my goodness.
So he had a heart bypass in 1994 in his early 50s and was told, like, you need to start looking after yourself, John, or you're going to be back here in 5 years looking another one. So he took that very literally. As that journey progressed, he discovered the benefits of milled flaxseed, and that led to then launching, well, I suppose trialling. Can we sell? Is there an appetite for this product in local pharmacies and chemist stores around?
As a health product.
As a health product, and the reaction was good. And then we moved into health food stores, and then Holland & Barrett came on board. Was probably our first big break in the UK. And then as things progressed and it became more popular, then it moved into the supermarket. So yeah, that was the genesis of the health food business.
We really couldn't do a whole episode about new beginnings without talking about the original Food Rebel. Craig Sams came on the show and we ended up recording one of our longest ever episodes, and we have to keep them quite strictly to half an hour for our radio partners. But we couldn't. We literally could not stop listening to Craig Sams' incredible story. This man is so much the sort of the grandfather of the modern food industry today. He didn't just found one hugely successful business, but founded several. He founded Green and Black's chocolate. He was the original challenger brand when really there was only Cadbury's and Nestle on the market. More recently, Gusto. He founded Whole Earth Foods. It just an incredible story. I mean, we can't put all of it into this episode, but I would love to. It is just the most interesting story. If you have time, go back and listen to the whole episode, because it's just a wealth of incredible moments of literally following your gut in all the ways of the word, but following your gut instinct, following the fun, following the joy, and just seeing where it ends up. And for Craig Sams, it's ended up in some absolutely incredible places.
Later that year, my brother joined me in the business. I'd found much larger premises for a bigger restaurant, and that was known as Seed Restaurant. It was in sort of between Paddington and Bayswater in London, and it became very trendy. You know, John Lennon and Yoko and Terence Stamp and people like that were regulars at the restaurant, and we did a full range of macrobiotic food, and we had an urn of green tea that you could help yourself to as much as you liked. People started saying, look, I don't want to have to come here every time I want to eat brown rice. Can I buy some from you? So we started packing the foods and selling it to people who came to the restaurant. And then as my brother Gregory got a shop together in All Saints Road in Notting Hill. And it was the first, it was called Ceres Grain Shop. And for a while, the health food trade used the term grain shop to describe the other shops that were opening up like it, that really focused on, you could go in and buy brown rice, millet, buckwheat, seaweed, miso, all these foods that nobody had ever seen before. And we started wholesaling to other shops that were opening up like that. And then health food shops wanted to get on board. And so they would buy our pre-packed brown rice and other grains and Japanese foods, because macrobiotics had a strong, the book about macrobiotics was called Zen Macrobiotics, and that was the idea. So we started, and we also sold patchouli, because the same people who ate brown rice and kombu seaweed and miso also tended to prefer patchouli as a fragrance. We had the shop on Portobello Road. We called the wholesaling company Harmony Foods, and that was our brand. We opened a bakery next door to our shop in Portobello Road. That was the first bakery to do sourdough bread. My brother would buy wheat from farmers who were members of the Soil Association. There wasn't any certification in those days, but you assumed that they were organic. He would mill it on a stone mill that we had in our warehouse, and then the flour would come to the bakery and we'd bake organic whole wheat, sourdough, and rye and other breads. We did use white flour, but only for the crosses on the hot cross buns, but otherwise we were 100% whole grain.
Fantastic.
That carried on, and then more people jumped into the business. Stuff like brown rice and beans were a commodity. We'd created the first sugar-free jams, which were sweetened with apple juice, approved by the British Diabetic Association. Our peanut butter was really going well, but the other products were, anybody ultimately could put brown rice in a bag or beans or whatever. My brother created something called the Veggie Burger. Nobody had ever used the word before, so...
What kind of year was that then?
That was in 81.
81, okay.
And we trademarked the name because it hadn't been... you can't trademark something unless it's an original word.
Right.
And so we launched the Veggie Burger, but we were struggling financially. We were a little bit too big for our boots. So my brother took the Veggie Burger out of the company and ran with that and was very successful with it. I licensed all of the brown rice and beans, what were the Harmony brand products, to another company and concentrated on peanut butter and jam, and took that through the 80s. Peanut butter was very successful. We launched the first organic peanut butter, and it was in Tesco and doing really well. I was looking for another source of organic peanuts because we were struggling with the one we had. Found some farmers in Africa, in Togo, who were producing organic peanuts. They weren't good enough for our peanut butter, but they also had cocoa beans.
Wow.
And that led me into the chocolate business.
So just before we move on, so the peanut and the jam and the rice, was that the start of Whole Earth Foods?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's and then that then grew into its own entity that we know today.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
The chocolate, having just celebrated in 87, 20 years of no sugar in our range. When I read a book called Dine Out and Lose Weight by a guy called Michel Montignac that had the concept of glycemic index. So it was what something does to your blood sugar. Glucose is 100. That's the standard. Brown rice was 65 because it takes longer to break down. Whole wheat bread is somewhere around there as well. 70% dark chocolate was 22, so quite low. So when I was dealing with the farmers in Africa who had the peanuts and the cocoa beans, we got a sample made of a 70% chocolate to see what it would be like. My girlfriend came back to my place, took one bite. She was a journalist at the time, and just said, "This is the best chocolate I've ever tasted. You have to do it." I said, "But it's got sugar, and how are we going to?" Anyway, we did it, and I thought some brilliant names for it: Eco Chalk, Bio Chalk, Natu Chalk. And she said, "What about green and black? Green because it's organic, and black because it's the darkest chocolate on the market."
Oh, I love that.
So we launched it in September of 91. We got married in November of 91. And she really put her heart and soul into getting word out about the brand, and through her network of journalist allies, all of whom spend most of their lives writing about other people doing stuff. So they were quite excited that one of their number actually was doing something herself.
They're friends, yeah. So this is your wife, Josephine.
That's right, yeah. Jo Fairley.
Yeah.
And
she was the co-founder then of Green and Blacks with you.
Of the chocolate brand.
And at that time, chocolate, 1991, I mean, I was about 10 or 11 at that time. It was just Cadbury's, wasn't it? Or Bourneville.
Well, Bourneville was 34% cocoa solids, so half the cocoa solids. And it wasn't even 34%. It was 20% cocoa mass and 14% cocoa butter. So you didn't have any challenging, bitter, chocolatey type flavors. We did send a sample to one supermarket chain, who I won't name, who sent it back unopened with a bar of cooking chocolate, which was 49%. And basically, the message was, don't be silly, boys.
We've already got cooking chocolate.
Yeah, we've got cooking chocolate, and people won't eat this kind
They just thought
stuff.
there wasn't a market at all.
They didn't think there would
really
be.
Dark chocolate.
Yeah, but they were wrong, and they realized they were wrong, and stocked it.
It's just almost unfathomable, isn't it, to think that there was a time where it wasn't part of the mainstream kind of culinary landscape. We grew up with Green and Blacks, and to think of a time when somebody wouldn't recognise for what it is now, and I think that's the beauty about when people kind of really disrupt any given space. It's they do something which everyone goes, "Oh, that'll never work." And the amount of times, and it takes that sort of pioneering mindset to stick with it, and to despite everyone saying this is a terrible idea, it's never going to work, but to go with it. I think, thank goodness people have done that.
You've been listening to Food Rebels, which is available on radio stations around the UK and further afield. You can also listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify and Audible. We're also on Instagram at @food_rebels. Give us a follow, do get in touch. We love hearing from you, and let us know what you think. Thanks so much for joining us, and make sure you taste the rebellion.